Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Lani Habrock here, your Government Affairs Director. Very excited for our guest today on Coffee with the Candidates. We have mayoral candidate, Mr. Greg Robinson. He's with us today. Mr. Robinson has a very big list of accomplishments and work that he's done specifically in the city of Tulsa. Among those things, he started a neighborhood elementary school called Greenwood Leadership Academy in partnership with some other founders. And he's also been a committed volunteer and mentor at Tulsa McLean High School. He currently serves as lead organizer for Demanding a Just Tulsa. He also serves as board member for several organizations in Tulsa, including A Way Home for Tulsa, the historic Greenwood District Main Street Program, the Terrence Crutcher Foundation, the Greater Tulsa African American Affairs Commission, and the 1921 Race Massacre Mass Graves Commission and Black Wall Street Chamber of Commerce. I also want to mention that in 2012, he was hired as an organizer for President Obama's presidential reelection campaign. So, Candidate Robinson, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Lani. It's good to be on.
So you have done a whole lot of community organizing and grassroots work. Can you tell us more about that? Tell us about your background, what all of that looked like.
Yeah, so I really have to go back to my father. He was an activist here. He used to drive my little brother and I around and make us listen to Motown music, but then he would turn on the Malcolm X speeches and the Martin Luther King speeches. We were trying to go to sleep. And I saw him. I saw him fight for the Tulsa Police Department, the Black officers within the Tulsa Police Department. I saw him fight for the Tulsa Race Massacre survivors. I saw him build homes for low-income families. And he really taught me that you have to be able to stand on the side of justice, regardless of the personal cost. And so when I got the opportunity to start working with the Obama campaign as a senior in college, as a matter of fact, I took that. And the first real time I got out there knocking on doors as an organizer, I met a young man and I gave him the spiel, so to speak, and I was very confident. And he said to me, I was broke before Barack Obama got elected and I'm broke now. So you can get off of my porch. And it was an incredibly important moment for me because I clicked out of being, a staffer on the Obama campaign. And I realized that regardless of where you are across the country, there are people in communities just like the ones I grew up in North Tulsa that have lost faith and lost hope in their ability to influence government and influence and faith in the democratic process as a whole. And so that's what I've dedicated myself to as an organizer, is building power in communities so that they can truly know that they have the ability to affect their state, local, national governments, and they have the responsibility to. And so I've been able to do that across the country, and I've been able to do it here at home, working with the McCares Foundation, starting the Parent Community Action Team, where we're taking parents, advocates, and teachers and built their organizing and movement building skills to address the critical issues that are affecting their families and the families of their neighbors. Organizing is simply about building enough power to make the changes that the people being affected want to see. And I just deeply believe that that's the way we create a better city, a state, and a country.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with that. One of our priorities at CAIR this coming year and moving forward is absolutely about strengthening our democracy. And I think that that's what you've been touching on, is kind of that voter accessibility piece. Like, not only do people need to feel like their vote matters and need to feel like their work towards advocacy matters, but they need to be able to vote, and that needs to be a right that's accessible to them. what during your grassroots work and knocking doors and just everything that you've done, what other needs have you seen the community of Tulsa has? What needs are unmet, and are there any that surprised you that you didn't know about before you started your work?
I will tell you, when we first started doing our listening campaigns, I really expected to hear a lot of the issues that I had heard on a national level for so many years, healthcare and things like that. The biggest issue that I heard starting out was about the number of dogs that were off leashes in the community, the level of kind of overgrown trees and untaken care of city landscaping that was prohibiting people from having the sorts of walkable experiences, healthy sorts of living experiences that people value in their neighborhoods and in their communities. And to me, when you look at the city of Tulsa, much like I think any other community, public health has to be much more of a topic on politicians' minds. It is true that in the city of Tulsa, once you kind of crossed the Arkansas River to the west in the city, or the Highway 244 to the north, it becomes harder to breathe. The sidewalks become harder to find. The access to fresh food, the access to quality jobs, to affordable but quality housing, to transportation, to healthcare, all of those things become more difficult to find. And those are the things that people are talking about when they're talking about public safety. They're talking about not wanting to feel like they're being hunted by the police. They're talking about wanting care for themselves and for their family members in the mode of mental health resources. And so in hearing those and then looking at the data that the city of Tulsa has produced, whether that's the equality indicator studies that say things like African Americans and Latinos are 3 times as likely to be victims of use of force, whether they're adults or juveniles. When you look at the life expectancy gap between a person born in North Tulsa and a person born in South Tulsa, when you look at the number of jobs in Midtown being 2.5 times as much as the jobs available in West Tulsa, the things that I've heard in my time walking and talking and meeting with people in their homes and neighborhoods are reflected in the data. And it's why I'm running for mayor. It's why I think it's past time that we not just talk about these issues, but we also put intentional practices and policies to work to do something about them.
Yeah, well, that leads exactly into my next question about, there's a lot of different offices that you can run for. And what was it about the position of running for mayor that made you say, that's the one that I can make the most difference in?
Well, I would be lying to you if I said that I sat up and was thinking about what offices that I wanted to run for. I am an organizer. So by trade, I'm sort of a strategic thinker who likes to collaborate with a lot of different groups and then put people in positions to utilize their skills to accomplish something bigger than any individual person, right? That is how I am aligned. However, through the work that we had been doing, primarily working with and pushing city officials and decision makers at the city of Tulsa level, it became very clear that there are a lot of people at the city that are trying to do a lot of good things and move things forward, but there was a lack of leadership at the top. And too many times there were just too many empty promises, too much admiring of problems instead of solving them. And I felt that Tulsans needed a choice. I felt that we needed a choice to have someone who was willing to actually do what they said they would do and stand with citizens instead of of political ambitions or of other political powers. And so, after asking, quite frankly, a lot of older, more seasoned political folks, I had to decide if I was willing to take the same stand that I've asked so many people in the past to take. And I am. I'm willing to stand with Tulsans if they're willing to fight for a better city.
Yeah, that's so funny because our last coffee with the candidates, we had Mari Turner on here, and she said relatively the same thing. She's a community organizer, and she said, I had to put my money where my mouth is. I've been telling all these other people to run, and I realized it was my time. So, yeah. Looking at your website, it's very clear that you have 4 main issues that you are really passionate about. You have freedom, justice, equity, and safety.
Yeah.
And I can't hear those words in the context of the city of Tulsa without thinking about the Greenwood Massacre.
Yeah.
And so can you tell us about your history with that tragic event, and also how it has shaped, if it has shaped, your campaign?
Yeah. So growing up in the shadows, really, of Greenwood, just north of the historic Greenwood area, which was 40 blocks, not the 2 that are being recognized and left right now within the city of Tulsa, but it was 40 square blocks. I used to walk in those areas with my father, drive around, and he would tell me of this land, really, it sounded like to me, that was full of businesses and of professionals and of entertainment and of homes of all sorts of value. And I'm looking around at really nothing and asking, what happened? And that's when I began to learn about really the heroic story of those Black pioneers that were not just in Tulsa, but were strewn across many Black towns in Oklahoma. People don't realize that Oklahoma could have been an all-Black state. There were more Black towns in Oklahoma than anywhere else in the country. And that's what really gave Tulsa this power. It sat right on a key railroad strip. It was obviously at that time booming due to oil, but you also had so many Black towns that were coalescing and bringing resources and economics into this little 40 square block land of Greenwood. And it truly became something that, as the great Booker T. Washington said, wow, this is the Negro Wall Street of America. It literally was the most affluent area for African Americans in the country. And so when you understanding that backdrop and then living in the remnants of it was something that I could not ignore. I watched my father, along with the great senators and representatives, that the Don Rosses of the world that fought so hard for race massacre reparations and for justice for those still survivors at that time and descendants of the massacre. That as a little boy, I saw that. And so to now be in a position, my father gone, many of the survivors gone, there is a sense of deep responsibility to do, coming on the 100th year anniversary, what so many of them fought so hard to do but failed to see done, which is to truly find justice for the victims of the massacre. We have to understand that in 1921, there was millions of dollars of property damage done in 1921 dollars, right? There were no insurance payouts made. There were hundreds of people who were killed. There are still hundreds of people who are missing because we dumped bodies in unmarked graves. We've heard stories of bodies being dumped in a river. We've heard stories of bodies being charred. Who knows, right? The real depths of the devastation. And that's why the work that we really have upon us to do with the 100-year massacre approaching is just so pivotal. So being someone who can look back on his family lineage and understand that there was a time when the only school that my aunties and uncles could go to was Booker T. Washington High School. That understands that they lived through, that my grandmother lived through the heights of what Greenwood was, and that my aunts and uncles lived through the resurgence, but also lived through the devastation. And so here I am, a child of Greenwood in many ways, and just someone who has, it's my duty to do what I can to advance the cause of justice for those who haven't had it. Greenwood is not just important to the city of Tulsa; it is critical to the country. It is true that we cannot truly move forward as a country until we have provided justice to those who've been victimized, and that means reparations. And it has to start in Tulsa, but quite frankly, it has to stretch across the country. It's the only way, really, to make amends and to start advancing again on the economic opportunities and closing the wealth gaps that have been created by nothing other than systemic racism and white supremacy that has gone ignored for too long. And Tulsa is ground zero for that. So I don't say that with bitterness in my heart. I say it just simply as you can't move forward without telling the truth. I still have a deep hope in what Tulsa can be, but that hope is centered in a belief that I think that we can truly make amends and then move forward together.
Yeah, thank you for that. So you've mentioned, reparations. In addition to reparations, what are some other nuts and bolts things that you think Tulsa needs to really provide that justice, that freedom, that safety that you see the Tulsa community needs?
Yeah, for me, this is about upward mobility for every single Tulsan, whether you're a young person that's growing up in 46th Street North in Comanche or 61st Street South in what we call Hope Valley, whether you're a entrepreneur in East Tulsa, or whether you're a hardworking laborer coming out of West Tulsa, right? Whether you're a new to Tulsa entrepreneur that's trying to kind of make their hay, or you're a lifelong Tulsan like myself trying to make life better for their families. Everyone deserves a pathway forward. I think that pathway starts with inclusive economic growth. I think that it continues with a holistic view of investing in public safety that includes and highlights investments in mental health resources and investments in public health resources. I think that we have to be more innovative in looking at our transportation system and creating equity within housing and supporting our public school system. And I think we have to continue to prioritize the safety of Tulsans over politics. And so I think that when you look at those four areas, if we can do those things, that we can understand that inclusion actually equals prosperity. That's the direction we need to go. In Tulsa right now, we have golden corridors. If you don't live in Midtown, if you don't live in South Tulsa, then you have to kind of travel to get to the economic centers of the city. And now we're built on tax dollars and sales tax dollars, which means that we're asking Tulsans that live in the city to travel further to spend their dollars in the city. So that is not a sound economic principle. We need to have community development from a community investment standpoint, which is centered in North, South, East, West Tulsa, regardless of where you are. Those communities need to be able to drive the economic opportunities there, and the city needs to be able to support that, so that there aren't these food deserts and educational equity gaps depending on the neighborhood that you live in. We have to invest in green infrastructure. We are a city that's growing green jobs, but our infrastructure has to be a point of focus so that we can sustain through the natural disasters that are sure to continue happening: tornadoes, floods, etc., illness, diseases, but also the economic crises that are sure to come. Are we going to be sustainable for our grandchildren's grandchildren is the question that I like to ask. Where are we going to be a generation from now? And so what I want for people to understand is that when I talk about equity, when I talk about justice, when I talk about safety, when I talk about freedom, I'm not just talking about protesting. I'm talking about policies, and I'm talking about solutions to housing inequity. I'm talking about an economic platform and vision that is going to be prosperous for everyone. Truly, when everyone gets a slice of the pie, we are all going to rise. That is the great promise of America. That is really the key to the kingdom, so to speak. And here in Tulsa, we have to get back to being a model, an economic driver in the region. And I think it starts by learning from our past mistakes, as you have brought up, and really focusing on how we can be better across the board, and centering equity and inclusion throughout our work.
Yeah, that's a very holistic approach that as a policy person, I very much appreciate, because I think people hear words like, justice and equity, and they think exactly what you said. They think, oh, that just means protest. Right. That just means the liberals are trying to destroy our economy. But that's not it at all. Like you said, if we all rise together. So I appreciate that comment from you. So to kind of switch topics a little bit, right now has been a crazy time to run for office. So I'm wondering, you as a community organizer, how have you continued in your campaign to connect with voters where they are?
Well, I tell you this, for me, actually, my first priority is family and is kids. I mean, I am still a staff member at CAIR's Foundation and a staff member at Greenwood Leadership Academy. And we have worked since the beginning of this crisis to make sure that our kids have internet, to make sure that our families have the sorts of educational devices to continue their learning, and to make sure that our families have the resources in terms of food, in terms of clothing and proper shelter, so that their kids are not falling, our kids really are not falling behind. My mother is someone who has battled 32 years now with multiple sclerosis. She is as highly susceptible to the dangers of any sickness, especially one as threatening as COVID-19, as anyone. And so it's something that I've tried to be extremely cautious about. It's something that I've tried to follow the advice of the health officials that we have here locally, but also looked at best practices in different cities and different countries, quite frankly, of what we can do. It's why our campaign, even just yesterday, changed our policies. We've shut down the office except for between the hours of 12 and 4 p.m. You can't just walk in. You've got to kind of call, and we'll meet you outside and get you the things that you need. We've set up our campaign meetings when we would normally be doing house meetings at people's homes and inside people's homes. We've limited the amount of people that we talk to. If we are talking to you, in person. It's going to be outside, but mainly it's been across Zoom. We are not going to be doing in-person conversations at the door. We're just going to be dropping literature off at the doors, and we have a hard focus on talking to as many voters as we can, over the phones and via text message, and also utilizing the virtual platforms like this one. So it is definitely a different sort of space. I would love to be out there, hugging and talking and getting up close and personal with Tulsans. That's kind of, it's my love language, really. But certainly the best thing that we can do right now for all Tulsans is to follow the guidelines of our health officials and stay as safe as possible. And I will say this: no election is worth the life of anyone. No accomplishment or anything is worth the life of someone. If we don't win because we couldn't get to enough people because of COVID-19, well, then, God just had a different plan, and I'm okay with that. What I'm not okay with is making decisions that endanger the lives of Tulsans for a personal gain or for a group's gain. I don't think that's the precedent that we should set as public officials or as civic leaders.
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you for that comment. What issue do you wish that more just kind of everyday citizens knew more about?
Yeah, for me, I'm going to go back to the mental health issue. I think when you ask the questions about, crime and drug use, and when you ask the questions about education as well, at the core of that is a lack of investment and a lack of resource around mental health treatment, mental health professionals, mental health resources for everyday Tulsans and for everyday kids. Within education, there really is not a tremendous disparity in the level of teaching across our schools. These teachers got into this for a love of what they're doing. They work extremely hard. But when you go into some of the schools, the fact of the matter is that Oklahoma has some of the highest ACE scores, adverse childhood experience scores in the country. Kids are carrying with them traumas and issues that we have to really have the infrastructure to support them on before we ask them to read, before we ask them to critically think, because their question is, why isn't anyone critically thinking about me and what I'm doing? My good friend Kojo Asamoah Caesar, who's going to be the next congressman out of District 1 here in Oklahoma, says, no one cares how much you know until they know how much you care. And to me, that really gets to the root of why we have to invest more in mental health resources within our schools. But mental health is also the reason that we have such high drug use in the city of Tulsa and in the state of Oklahoma as well. People are simply self-medicating. Yes, it's difficult to live in impoverished situations. It's difficult to be told that you're supposed to be able to accomplish things if you just work hard enough, and then you feel like you don't have the access to the resources that other people do. And you can begin to self-medicate, and that's what you see in a lot of our struggling communities. And really, there's no outlet for folks. There's no supports for folks. And so then when the police come, they're actually responding to a mental health crisis, right? And they're not equipped to do that. We're asking our police officers to be more than police. We're asking them to be social workers. We're asking them to be mental health counselors. We're asking them to be immigration officials. We have to invest more holistically when thinking about public safety. And so I think the mental health. And so here's a fact for you: we spend $122 million on the police force, and that's our public safety budget. We don't even have a line item for mental health professionals. It's a matter of priorities. It's a matter of rethinking what it means to keep a community safe. And so we have to become more empathetic. We have to destigmatize mental health because it truly is something that affects all of us, even those who think we are successful. We are going through mental health crisis every day, and I am not. I join in that number. The traumas that we go through, the struggles that we all go through, myself included, genuinely affect our decision making on a daily basis. So we have to be better about that. So I really do want to push people in the city of Tulsa to have more of an understanding of that and why we need to invest more deeply in it.
Yes, thank you so much for your empathetic and thoughtful campaign. I do want to let everybody know that if they want to get more information about you and your campaign and the things that you feel are important to Tulsa, they can go to gregfortulsa.com. We will post this live interview to our various social media platforms at CAIR Oklahoma. And I do want to say that CAIR Oklahoma is a 501c3 nonprofit. We do not endorse or oppose any candidate on here. A candidate being on our show is not an official endorsement. But I do want to let people know that you can find out more about at gregfortulsa.com. And Candidate Robinson, I will give you the last word. Do you have any final thoughts?
Well, I know that you all always have to ask about, folks visiting Tulsa and where they have to go and what they must eat. So I would say this: if you're in Tulsa, please make sure that you visit Greenwood. Take the Real Black Wall Street tour. Stop at Wanda J's and get you something to eat there. Stop at the Black Wall Street Liquid Lounge to get you a nice, cool drink. Stop by Silhouettes to get you some sneakers. Step into Lefties as your night is kind of revving up, and enjoy some music and grab you a drink there. And if you're really adventurous, head down to a place called Retro's Bar and Grill. They have the best fried chicken in the city, best kept secret. So those are some tips from a real Tulsan for you. That's how you can enjoy the best of the Greenwood area.
Well, thank you so much. Again, thank you for joining us today. Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Have a great day, and email us if you have any questions.
Take care.